this isn't true. They're trying to scare me. They're trying to force me to accept the lower amount. Don't worry, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And she did.
Yet again, the Department of Work and Pensions deliberately try and screw over one more claimant for thousands of pounds, whilst they secretly, behind the scenes, plot and plan to screw over every single disabled person who tries to stay in work, get work, or stay in self-employment. Before I go any further, listen to a review from one of the customers from the Justice Journals on how we managed to get them an extra £27,000 after the Department of Work and Pensions tried to screw them out of their rightful entitlement.
I had already applied for access to work, but there were so many delays, and they awarded me £3,000. And I'm like, that doesn't cover like any support, any practical real support. And I was like really in a very stressful place, because I was like, I don't know if I should accept that, or I've never gone through this process before with access to work. And I was voicing my frustration to my DWP my DWP access to work case handler, and they were dismissive and just not really supportive of me and my needs. And I reached out to her on Instagram and TikTok, and I says, I don't know if you can help me, but I'm really in a really difficult place because I'm really overwhelmed. I'm feeling frustrated. She was like, we booked an appointment. We had a really good chat. He explained kind of what the disabilities I have. I have ADHD, and I struggle with writing and constructing like a formal letter and outlining it in the right way, using the right terminology. She said, I will write these for you. I will create a claim, outlining everything and the support you actually do need. And she was amazing. Her letters were fantastic. DWP was still fighting myself consistently. They were going back and forth, just refusing, putting roadblocks. But every single time, Alison managed to come back and, say, no, this isn't true. They're trying to scare me. They're trying to force me to accept the lower amount. Don't worry, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And she did. She was amazing. Her support, her writing letters, and really overall, empathy of the whole situation. She was very patient. She was very knowledgeable. She's just genuinely a nice person. And finally, got confirmation that DWP acknowledged that I needed the additional more support that Alison had outlined and evidenced. And I got the award increased from £3,000 originally with minimal support to over £28,000 of support and coaching and software. And actually, I was quite shocked. I was quite surprised. I'm still overwhelmed by it, because it's like, oh my God, I would have never been able to do this without her support. I would have never been able to achieve this level of support if it wasn't for her and her services.
Now, for those of you that don't know, Access to Work is a funding that is available for disabled people to either stay in work, start work, or stay in self-employment, and in some cases start self-employment. The funding can be used to pay for all sorts of things. And if you want any more information about that, make sure you go along to thejusticejournals.com. But as you can see, they made it very, very difficult. I want to point out that we had to write 12 different letters to get this person some help. And it was only when we threatened them with an invoice ourselves, charging them £150 an hour for every single letter that was written, and the threat that we would publish that invoice, did they put through this claim. This person was not only heavily disabled, they're also in a wheelchair, and they have a number of other things as well. I think we can all agree anybody that is in a wheelchair is going to need more than £3,000 when it comes to getting equipment, new equipment and adaptable equipment. Let's dive into some more facts. Now, you may be well aware that in December 2024, the High Court ruled that DWP's disability benefit consultation, which went nowhere when they were also trying to screw over disabled people by changing the work capability assessment. The High Court judged that it was misleading, rushed and unfair. Unfortunately, instead of taking heed of what the High Court said and taking on their suggestions, the Department of Work and Pensions now plans to remove the work capability assessment altogether to avoid any potential legal scrutiny. However, Access to Work staff have leaked a very important email indeed, about how the Department of Work and Pensions are trying to change and stop the amount of funding that people can get through the Access to Work scheme. Right now, you can get up to £69,250 a year. And I'm going to give you a real shocker here. I actually learned about the Access to Work scheme not when I was working for the Department of Work and Pensions, not when I was writing the training for how universal credit claims for disabled claimants should be treated if they were self-employed. No, not at all. I learned of the Access to Work grant and funding through TikTok. That's right. So it just goes to show you how appalling DWP are in their training in the first place, and as a disabled person myself, why it was never even offered to me at the time when I was on universal credit. And so there we go. But anyway, let's dive in to this latest whistleblowing against the Department of Work and Pensions. So here we have in the Canary, the DWP has tried to hide major changes to a grant scheme for disabled people. I am going to be leaving this down, the link of this, so you can actually go and have a little look at it and look at this possible internal moves by the Department of Work and Pensions has only been exposed once more. The contempt that this Labour Party government has for chronically ill and disabled people. It's like we're seen as their target, aren't we? We're all on their hit list. And the person that you heard of at the beginning of this YouTube had been waiting for nearly a year. Can someone please explain to me how any type of support can be considered support if you're making someone who's disabled wait an entire year before they, one, get a reply, and two, before they can even access funding? I've also heard from people who are working as service providers as well for Access to Work that they're having to wait between 3 and 6 months to have a single invoice paid. most people are not going to be able to support anybody when they're having to wait that long for invoices. So this is like a double-edged sword. Not only is the Department of Work and Pensions making disabled people wait for very much required equipment and resources, but they're also making the people who supply those resources wait as well. This is unlawful, it is unfair, and I also would argue that it's deliberately harassing as a deterrent to stop people from applying for something that they are legally entitled to. Now, what the secret email from an Access to Work employee has disclosed is that the Department of Work and Pensions are trying to push employers to buy special aids and equipment instead of the Access to Work funding. Hard limits on supporting support workers' hourly rates, and stricter rules and criteria for awarding job aid support workers. And here, removing flexibility to allow small increases in support without the need to raise a change of circumstances. Now, all of those things are all they're going to do is put a disabled person at more of a disadvantage. And it is absolutely disgusting. And Hasty has explained that these changes will affect all decisions made after this date. And the date is, by the way, the 28th of April. We are the 8th of May today. So it says reasonable adjustments become standard business items. So the next attack is upon self-employed disabled people who are trying self-employment or are indeed doing self-employed businesses as a means to supporting themselves because of their disability, because we all know the Department of Work and Pensions itself included are the worst employers on the planet when it comes to supporting disabled people. And heaven help you if you try and advocate your rights against bad employers on the grounds of disability, because lots of tribunals and legal processes will make the task of you trying to have a legal remit 1,000 times harder, because apparently we live in a country where we have disability laws, but in order to action them, you need to almost be a lawyer or a barrister. Pretty unhelpful. But there we are. That's where we're at with that one. I think this is particularly disgusting for self-employed people, because, like I said, self-employed people themselves go self-employed as a means of, one, being able to manage their disability, and two, because they just cannot find a decent employer, because the minute you mention disability in this country to employers, they run a mile. And obviously with the Department of Work and Pensions now trying to make changes to make sure that instead of Access to Work paying for aids and equipment, it's going to be the employers themselves. Disabled employees or companies or businesses that want to hire disabled employees is going to become even more far and few between, as it is already. I mean, I don't think Liz Kendall truly thought about this secret little agenda being released when she made her statement about giving disabled people hope. Liz Kendall and anyone else at the Department of Work and Pensions, do you think this is giving anybody who's disabled any hope at all? The fact that you're trying to screw disabled people over yet again behind closed doors with private little emails, actioning things before disabled people have got the right to legally remit it is utterly disgusting. Utterly disgusting. Unlawful, I would call it. Now, if it wasn't bad enough that disabled people are going to be targeted, it seems like the neurodivergent crew as well are being disabled. Here we go. Another notable change in the guidance was that support for neurodivergent individuals is going to be downgraded. Along with that, with mental health conditions and executive functioning issues, which is predominantly ADHD. This is just like, it just gets worse and worse and worse, and it really does. The link to this down below. I had to stop mid-recording of this because guess what? A Labour MP had the balls to bring their dark shadow to my front door and ask me to vote for them. So you can all imagine how that went. And he left pretty speechless with his little brochure ripped up in the palm of his hand. Now, if you are someone who is struggling with access to work, you're not getting any funding, or you want to make a cast iron application and you want a hand, then don't hesitate to get in contact with me over at thejusticejournals.com, and myself or one of my advisors will be more than happy to help you process that access to work funding claim before they cut the ties on that as well. But let me know in the comments what you think about this secret change that the Department of Work and Pensions have tried to skivvy in the back door under, again, a cloud, in the hope that nobody else would find out. It seems to be quite a well-practiced route, doesn't it, for the dishonest Department of Work and Pensions.